seen Karen Drucker in person and live and all that. So those who have not, if she comes close, you go close, see her. She's remarkable. If you think her music is beautiful, see it when she sings it herself. It's just moving, and I've had the great privilege and blessing to have attended a Woman's Spirit where she was the music director. So 5 days of singing with Karen Drucker, it's like, you know, beyond comparison. So thinking of blessings. And what I'm talking about today is receiving. And Steve did some of that last week as well, and I said to him, if it's repeated, then it's repeated. That you guys will get it maybe on a different level, or something changes because it's a different voice, different person. But on receiving, and I really liked what they brought up in, this is from Brene Brown, from The Gifts of Imperfection. Until we can receive with an open heart, we're never really giving with an open heart. When we attach judgment to receiving help, we knowingly or unknowingly attach judgment to giving help. Because we're great givers. I think everyone here knows how and when to give and to be there. And sometimes receiving is a little more challenging. I know it was that way for me. And thinking of receiving without going, no, without going, oh, you shouldn't have, or saying nothing at all, because sometimes the gifts, the goodness that came my way were so profound and speechless that I kind of either just stood there and, you know, your brain is somewhere else and you're trying to put it together and make sense, and sometimes it took me a day or two because it was so overwhelming or surprising that to receive, I was more like a stone statue. I've learned with this teaching to receive. I'm faster at getting it, I guess, putting it together and going, wow, how cool, or to just let me be me, of going crazy, going, you know, kind of above or beyond, but to come from a place of deepness, not, oh, you know, thank you, okay, and kind of walk off of being either in shock or, I don't really want this, but saying yes to what's ever given to me, and teaching me the circular motion, because it is circulation, giving and receiving. You really can't have one without the other. They talk about plants, that plants give off carbon dioxide. We give off carbon dioxide, and the plants receive it. How brilliant is that? They can't live without us, and we really can't live without them in a physical form. That it all comes together. It all is, you can't have one without the other, as I said before. So think of your deep, deep sense of receiving. Think of it maybe before this teaching, before you looked into a life or thought about spirituality as an opening, that it was something you wanted to pursue. And it's a very personalized, very individualized of how we do that, because we all have different personalities. But think of your deep self-receiving. Think of, how do you receive bad news? How do you receive listening to music? Some I know jump up and down, they go in the back, they dance, they sing along, they play air guitar. Some just sit there like, I wonder if they've got earplugs in, because they're not doing anything. There's not a smile, there's not a nothing. And yet they are as present as the person who's jumping up and down and singing along. It's how do you receive that? How do you receive compliments? I was always embarrassed or stood back or wanted to like go into the wall, into someplace and disappear. Learn to receive, because if you don't, you really don't know how to give. And I think we all really enjoy giving because we see the face of the other smile or laugh or become speechless. And you know that you've maybe touched them, that a part of them is opening up to a greater place within themselves. It's kind of what we do here in teaching, is to allow these ideas, these universal laws, to touch us deeper than we've known before in different ways. And we learn that from everybody around us. Think of how you receive news, how you receive the news of what Steve said. You know, there was a time when I would cry, yell at the TV, as if that's going to really help, but it helped me get some stuff out. And it's taken a long time to take that deep breath, that you know how people are feeling. And then what you send back is your love and your prayers for all, everyone. How long did it take you, or is taking you, to send love to Ben Laden? It took me a few days. It's like, oh, I'm not doing that right now. Nope, can't do it. But I recognized within myself that I wasn't in a place of giving. And the news I was receiving was so overwhelming that I couldn't process it for a while. But if this teaching, or of life, is to love all, then the love that we have to send to our enemies, to people that frustrate us, or whatever level of discomfort on our part, to send that to them, because we know that they're hurting too, or that they're unable at this point in their spiritual development to realize what they're doing to others. And you bless them. And you know that as you bless others, the blessings just keep coming back. So it's kind of selfish to give and receive, because we do it because we feel so good. And on a deeper level, the level that is within us that sometimes we don't go to, is receiving that from them, of changing their life to an extent that they open more to receive the good around them, rather than seeing something that is just too much for them to take. So remember that it's a circular route. You're doing a flow. You can use your hands, you can use your voice, you can use music, you can do prayers. That you as a receiver is giving a gift as well to the person who's giving you a compliment, who's giving you a piece of bread or homemade cookies. That they bring for an opening, for a warmth that is sharing. That when you change, when you accept, you're changing the world. And to know that you are on purpose doing that. You make things happen in your atmosphere. So at the end, the affirmation is, as I give thanks for the good now flowing into my life, I gladly share that good with others. The more I give, the more I receive. That's by Ernest, from a Holmes Reader on Practical Wisdom. So with that, we're going to talk of how abundance is in your life. And when I was at the end of kind of pulling this together, thinking this in my mind, I still ask Spirit, and then I oftentimes use affirmation cards, or I'll flip through a book and go and try and relate it. So I asked, what am I getting out of this talk? What am I hoping to express? And what came was enhanced relationships. I share a deep and loving relationship with myself, my ancestors, humanity, and Gaia. All of my relationships are enhanced by the deep and loving relationship that I share with God. Share, give and take. So I would like to introduce Megan. She's going to come up and give the other half of our talk.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. I'd like to begin by telling you something my mom has told me for years, which she got from Mary Morrissey, a motivational speaker. In the Old Testament, there is the story of David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant, and David was a small man. Goliath was a Philistine and challenged the Israelites to put forth a man to battle him. No soldier was willing, but David, despite his obvious physical disadvantage, volunteered. If he could beat Goliath, he was promised marriage to a princess and the wealth that comes along with that. When David went into battle against Goliath, his focus was on the outcome, not on the challenge. He was not thinking of how impossible Goliath's defeat seemed. His thoughts were on marriage to the princess. What would happen after he made it through? CSL's theme for the month of October is prosperity, abundance, and wealth. And I have a story about just that. I will let you know that I told this story to the Las Vegas Center in May, but since then, even greater things have happened. As many of you know, I graduated high school this last May and began at UNR about 2 months ago. I'm from Las Vegas, and I set the intention at the start of high school that as an International Baccalaureate, or IB graduate, I would go away to college with travel abroad opportunities without going into any debt. The IB program has been my Goliath for the past 4 years, but I had my intention set. An IB diploma is the hardest high school diploma in the country. I decided at the end of 8th grade to attend a high school that offered the IB program. And while at 14, I knew this was what I wanted, I didn't understand the path ahead of me. My family and I now joke that IB is so difficult, it is basically AP on steroids, but I was hopeful that it would lead to scholarships based on academic merit. My first 2 years of high school were the same as the rest of my peers. I took honors classes with a few AP classes, but it wasn't until my junior year that my IB education would begin. The summer between sophomore and junior year, I realized that I needed to figure out exactly how I was going to get college paid for. Just completing the IB diploma program wouldn't have money and plane tickets to Europe show up on my doorstep. I was fixated on my intention. My mom would remind me that it wasn't my job to define how I went to college, only that I worked toward going to college without debt. You have to treat and move your feet, so my parents and I began looking into what opportunities were out there for a debt-free college experience. I quickly learned that most schools award national merits very generously for their academic success. So between my sophomore and junior year, I took a 6-week SAT prep course to increase my score on the PSAT. The PSAT is the National Merit Qualifying Test for juniors that take the exam. If a junior takes the PSAT and scores in the top 1% of their state, they become a National Merit semifinalist. This is an honor awarded to about 16,000 students nationwide every year, and about 15,000 of them advance to finalist standing after completing a finalist application. In October of 2016, I took the PSAT. That December, I received my score. When I'd taken the PSAT my freshman and sophomore year, my composite scores would have been just about 200. I knew from past years a qualifying composite score for Nevada was about 215 out of 228. My junior year composite score was 219. I was relatively certain at that point that I would be a National Merit semifinalist, but nothing was official until the letters were sent out. In September of last year, myself and 4 other classmates were named National Merit semifinalists, and we were 5 of the 62 in Clark County. We were given about 3 weeks to submit the finalist applications, which would be announced in February. Around the same time semifinalists were announced, I began to narrow my college search. My initial standards remained, but I also decided that I wanted to go to a university which is close enough that I can visit home for more than just summers and Christmases. The more I searched, the more I began to realize that UNR had exactly what I wanted. Many colleges offer scholarships for just being a National Merit semifinalist, but for UNR's scholarship, you have to be a finalist. I turned in my National Merit finalist application at the beginning of last October and started a new round of waiting. Throughout this entire process, I was still working hard in IB. My junior year remains the hardest year of school I've ever been through, but I got a great education. I learned how to work hard and study hard. IB broadened my global perspective and surrounded me with highly motivated individuals who acted as positive peer pressure when I felt like giving up. As I waited, I also began imagining the day I would get my scholarship and how I'd react. For the first time, going away to college debt-free was not just an idea, but something that I was going to be experiencing in less than a year. So this is what I would imagine. There would be tears of happiness and lots of celebration. I picture opening the letter with my parents, or if my dad was working, calling him at work to give him the good news. I would have this daydream nearly every day, while I was showering, driving, procrastinating on homework, before I'd go to bed. Sometimes it would feel so real that I would be filled to the brim with pride and even get choked up. During the waiting period, I practiced what the Las Vegas Center's founding minister, Reverend Cynthia Clare, would call stating the truth in advance. I applied to UNR and began planning my housing. In November, my parents and I were given a private tour of the campus by the UNR National Merit recruiter. I told everyone who asked about my college plans that I had a full ride to UNR for being a National Merit finalist. In February, a letter from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation arrived. The letter had the good news I was waiting for. I cried from happiness while telling my mom what the letter said. Then I called my dad, who happened to be working that day, to tell him the great news. This all happened just like it did in my daydream. I'd set the intention at the start of high school that as an international baccalaureate graduate, I'd go away to college with travel abroad opportunities without going into any debt. In May, I was one of 19 students wearing a black robe as my high school's IB graduates. This was the information I had to tell the Las Vegas Center in May. At that time, I had almost $19,000 in scholarships to attend UNR, which I thought was for sure a full ride. And though I had completed the IB program at my school, I didn't yet know if I had tested high enough to get my IB diploma, since scores were released July 6th. When I went to UNR's freshman orientation in June, my parents and I broke down all the costs of Reno once more. There was an increase in tuition in the last year and additional fees that I hadn't accounted for. While I likely wouldn't have gone into debt for college, I definitely didn't have the full ride I'd been claiming. In fact, I was about $2,000 short of a full ride. I was disappointed, but my parents reminded me that there would always be enough. I told them that I understood that, but with the way things stood, I was disappointed I couldn't tell people I had a full ride, which I had sort of gotten into the habit of doing. Regardless, I made peace with my situation. I didn't think much more of that conversation until I arrived home the next evening, and I had an email waiting for me from UNR. There had been a revision to my scholarship package, and I had been awarded an additional scholarship I wasn't even aware I was eligible for. The scholarship was for $2,000, exactly what I needed to claim a full ride. A few weeks later, IB scores were released. There are 45 available points, but a candidate only needs 24 to be awarded a diploma. I got a total of 31 points and got my IB diploma. I set the intention at the start of high school that as an international baccalaureate graduate, I would go away to a college with travel abroad opportunities without going into any debt. I have my IB diploma, my full ride, and this week I will be going into the university's study abroad office to plan my trip to Ireland. I defeated my Goliath. My favorite part of this story is that if by only 18 years old, I manifested a full ride to college. Can you imagine what I have in store? I have the majority of my life yet to live, and I'm most excited about what I will manifest for my future. Abundance, prosperity, and wealth aren't things that just happen to us, but they are surprisingly accessible. The universe is always listening to our intentions, and it always gets you exactly what you need. This stuff really works. Thank you for letting me share my story with you.